Hello and welcome back, La Liga fans. This is the Total Football Analysis La Liga podcast. I'm your host, professional soccer player Alex Comcia, joined by El Profesor Chris Mumford, Professor of Innovation. What's up, Chris?
Not much, not much. What a week of football we're having.
What a week it has been. We also got coach slash expert analyst Scott Martin, who gets bragging rights this week over me with Real Madrid taking out Barcelona in El Clasico. What's going on, Scott?
Doing great.
There he is wearing the shirt. I did not wear my Barcelona shirt today, obviously.
Oh man, you got to rep in the down times.
Yeah, these are dark times to be a FC Barcelona fan. But as we mentioned, Real Madrid took all 3 points in an impressive performance against FC Barcelona, which we're going to dissect shortly. Sevilla lost again, this time to Eibar 1-0. Atletico Madrid beat Betis 2-0 with Suarez scoring once again late. And Real Sociedad is staying red hot in a 4-1 thumping of Huesca, an impressive performance from David Villa to take them to top spot in La Liga this week. This means going into the end of the week, the table has Real Sociedad first, Real Madrid second, Granada third with a solid win over Getafe, Villarreal fourth, Atletico Madrid fifth, Cadiz in sixth, and then FC Barcelona and Sevilla finding themselves 12th and 13th, respectively, with back-to-back losses. Yikes. Champions League and Europa League featured this past week as well, with Sevilla tying Chelsea 0-0, Barcelona smashing Ferencváros 5-1, Atletico Madrid losing to Bayern 4-0, and Real Madrid losing to Shakhtar 3-2. In Europa League, Granada beat PSV 2-1, Real Sociedad beat Rijeka 1-0, and Villarreal had a thriller against Sivasspor, winning 5-3. Gentlemen, so much football happening so fast. Is there any particular results, storylines, or players that have really stood out to you this past week? Let's start with you, Chris.
Well, I think in the beginning of the season, we talked about how everything was going to be messy, as in Messy. It has actually not been messy very much at all, Messi, unfortunately. I think it's true to form. You look at the table, you look at the fact that players have to play every 3 days, and we're only a few weeks into the season, and it seems like we've got a lot of dead legs. Out of curiosity, Alex, what is it like playing games every 3 days, and what's the recovery like after 2 or 3 weeks of the same thing?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that earlier too. There's a lot of games in a short amount of time. We're seeing a lot of injuries happen. I mean, Chiellini, we just talked about off air. It could be out for 6 months. There's some injuries potentially with Real Madrid and Barcelona too. And yeah, this is going to be a really dark, end of the year in my opinion. It's not easy to play, every 3 days and expect to, really improve because in the middle, you're recovering, like you said, Chris. Let's say you play on Saturday, then you're spending Sunday and Monday and Tuesday just straight recovery. The guys that didn't play as much might do, a 6v6 or a 5v5 to stay sharp. But where you really have to be engaged is mentally, because let's say you're a team like Sevilla right now who's not doing so well, a team like FC Barcelona right now who is not doing so well. Koeman doesn't have time, if we're using Barcelona's case, to really turn that around in terms of getting reps in. So that's where it gets really challenging. You find yourselves, in these momentum switches, and if you can get into the wrong side of that momentum, you have a situation right now where, an FC Barcelona is not doing exceptionally well, or maybe even a Sevilla in La Liga is not doing exceptionally well. And on the other hand, Sociedad, Real Madrid has responded to that momentum, in an upward slant. So it's very difficult, and I think it's going to continue to be difficult with this COVID crisis that continues to get worse. We hear about Cristiano Ronaldo, for example, testing positive and has to miss 2 weeks. That is crucial. So we'll get into that as well. Scott, is there anything that's been standing out to you lately in this crazy year?
I mean, to me, following up on your point, I think one of the reasons we're seeing so much chaos is because you have some teams that don't have much depth, so they have to keep playing the same players, or almost the same players every 3 days. Barcelona, even Atletico, there's so much rotation in these early weeks that it just doesn't. I mean, look at Real Madrid's case this past week. You know, they had the shock loss to Cadiz. They followed that up with, I think, 8 new players in the starting lineup against Shakhtar, lost that game as well. And then I think, you know, what we see is Zidane's preferred 11 against Barcelona. So just so much rotation from the big sides. And you can see that lack of fluid play as they're heavily rotated. And, you know, the upside is that maybe you preserve the legs and you have to deal with fewer injuries. The downside is that things are going to get messy. And, you know, that I think has to be the expectation for coaches, players, fans, and analysts.
Exactly. And Messi is definitely the word of the day, Messy. So let's go into our Champions League in Europe recap here. Sevilla tied Chelsea 0-0, as we've mentioned, in a stalemate. It saw Sevilla have the majority of possession with 57%, but ultimately they could not unlock a very defensive-minded Chelsea led by Frank Lampard. Barcelona smashed Ferencváros 5-1. Messi won a beautiful PK after a run slot at home. Fati was in form. Coutinho got his goal as well. But it saw Gerard Piqué get a weird, awkward red card at the end there. And that means he's going to miss that Juventus game. Ousmane Dembele got his goal, and Barcelona looked good going into El Clasico. But switching gears, Real Madrid lost to Shakhtar in a shock loss, quite honestly, losing 3-2. The big deal there was Sergio Ramos he wasn't part of that back line, and I think we see a different player. We've had this discussion before in Rafael Varane. Poor performance from him in that game. Marcelo defensively wasn't great, but offensively was decent. And Thibaut Courtois, don't think he had his best game either, Chris, but really responded in El Clasico afterwards.
Yeah, so was the heavy rotation. And yeah, with Sergio Ramos, you had to, unfortunately, he had a rough first half. Better in the second, I thought he and Varane started to show some sort of chemistry. But by that point, the damage was done. So I think there were a number of times in the first half where, we just kept seeing the 2 outside backs, Marcelo and Mendy, getting caught behind both center backs who were way up in the midfield pressing. And so there would be this, this semicircle where Shakhtar could just penetrate right through the middle, play very direct, and that was their game plan from the start. So Real Madrid gave them exactly what they wanted from the get-go, and we're down 3-0 at halftime. But so, I mean, the defensive issues at the back line, that was an obvious red flag. But when you really look at the way the game was played, Real Madrid kind of played with the high press. They were at least up the pitch, but there wasn't a whole lot of pressure on the ball carrier. And there were always easy outlets for Shakhtar. We saw Casemiro going way up the pitch to, almost even with the forwards to help with the press. And Rodrigo and Asensio just kind of got lost in the shuffle. So Casemiro goes up to help them. Modric and Valverde don't really give the coverage that Casemiro needed. And so that fell on the center backs. And both went. And that's where I think, Ramos's presence really does make that big of a difference, because when he's in, he's the guy who goes into the midfield. He's the one who gives coverage for Casemiro if he has to step. And Varane covers Ramos. I don't think Varane and Militao had that worked out going into. So big issue, massive pockets of space between the lines for Shakhtar. And they punished Real Madrid. I mean, that first half was ugly from Real Madrid's perspective.
Hey, Scott, last week we talked about the idea of basically, does the Galactico model work anymore? Uh, Shakhtar came in with a system, and they came in just fearless and hungry, kind of Leeds hungry, if you will. And I just wonder if maybe system can't overcome Galactico, but on any given Tuesday or Wednesday, system plus intensity can. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we definitely saw that with this match. And this is a Shakhtar team. Remember, they were missing 10 players who were out with COVID. So that's, basically their starting 11. They had like 4 regulars for this team. I'm trying to recall. They had all 3 subs were 20 or younger. And I want to say 8 of the 11 starters were 23 or younger. So this was basically their B team. So they had a couple of key players in key positions, but otherwise, yeah, we saw system. We saw, I think, the hunger of these youth players to really show up and prove themselves. And, we saw the trust they had in their coach, Castro. So they were willing to sit back. They were willing to put in the work. And, I don't know if Real Madrid took them lightly because of their issues. It's a smaller club anyways, biggest in Ukraine, a team that you always expect to contend in the Europa League, but not so much in the Champions League. It's rare that they make the knockout stages.
Right. What's interesting about Shakhtar too is, their recruiting model is excellent. And I don't know what scouts they have down there in Brazil, but they are able to pull out these Brazilians at a young age. And Chris and Scott, you guys both mentioned the word hungry. These guys are insanely hungry for an opportunity to showcase themselves at the highest level. You'll get players like Dentinho, Tete, Dodo. Those guys have all made, really great impacts on the team. You've had Willian in the past. And, they're just a team a club really, that is well coached. They're always ready to play and hungry and going at teams. And they won this tactical battle early on. And my highlight too was, like you said, Scott, the fullbacks. The line was all out of place. You'd have the center back stepping and then the fullbacks wouldn't go. Mendy looked a little awkward on the right-handed side, which is obviously always going to happen with a left-footed player. The encouraging thing though for me was Real Madrid's midfield. I thought they weren't particularly poor. They were decent, and I know you've really been looking forward to seeing Casemiro back in the lineup. We had this discussion last week, and also Federico Valverde, because he offers something different than that traditional midfielder that just sits in there. He really bombs forward and causes a lot of issues, and then I think we saw that more in the second half. Jovic up top was, I don't know what we can really say anymore about Jovic. It's kind of like he's in the same space as Antoine Griezmann right now with this big money signing. And this goes back to your Galactico point, Chris, is maybe that's not the model anymore. Maybe that's just not it, to sign these big time superstars and it doesn't work out. But on the other hand, you have had big time superstars such as, the Cristiano Ronaldos of this world. They do work out. So who's to say? I'm not sure. But obviously a disappointing result for Real Madrid. They responded well, counterattacks the story in that game. But then Bayern Munich goes and absolutely demolishes Atletico Madrid. Kingsley Coman in particular put on a real show in this one. And he really showcased why, he is one of the most, if not the most dangerous player 1v1 attacking in wide spots in this game. Would you agree, Chris and Scott?
I think that's a tough position. That's why I'm hesitating, because there's some already very good players there, particularly youngsters. So I don't know if I'm ready to hand the crown over to him quite yet. But Scott, what's your take on it?
I'll say that between he and Davey, probably the most dangerous left side in the world. I don't know I don't know if I'd give it to Coman on his own, but between the two of them, knowing that defenses can't overcompensate by sending an extra defender because you've got Lewandowski lurking in the box. Yeah, really left side, and great run by Coman on that. I think it was the first goal.
First goal, yeah.
Yeah, ball over the top. Yeah.
Yeah, Kimmich makes an absolute, beauty of a drill of a ball over to Coman, making a late run on that left-handed side. I think Kimmich has 5 assists in his last 4 Champions League games, something ridiculous like that. Goretzka's second goal, he's been super impactful for Bayern. Again, good work from Coman on that goal where he chops and works it over to Goretzka and he finishes. And then Tolisso with arguably the goal of the week, smashes the ball in the top right-hand corner. I don't think there's anything that the goalkeeper can do there. And then that last goal is why I'm making his case, Kingsley Coman's case, is, he goes through with just an amazing pace and then chops inside with this Ronaldo chop on his back heel and then cuts back to his outside foot and then finishes. Really beautiful to watch. But I guess we can't give him the crown quite yet. Maybe he doesn't need our approval is what we're saying. So getting into our recap here of back to La Liga. And, the real only big game that mattered this week was El Clasico. Like we mentioned, Barcelona 1, Real Madrid 3. Scott, what worked well for Real Madrid in this game?
So it seemed to me in this game that Zidane got the starting 11 right. That was the key. That's something that had escaped him in the past few weeks. But this was a side that worked together really well. Nacho, surprisingly, played pretty well defensively. And then Lucas Vazquez even improved upon that. He was one of the most impressive players on the pitch as the right back. But for me, what really did it was the work of the midfield. So, Casemiro was allowed to be his midfield wrecking self. He's got to have that role. Kroos, deep line playmaker, helps set the tempo. That's what was missing in, I think, the first Clasico of the previous season. So, I think Kroos is showing that he, along with Casemiro, needs to be in that lineup. But then you got the difference maker, Fede Valverde. His runs playing off of Asensio were just such a threat all match. So he was just consistently finding the space behind De Jong. And, that put him in a position where he was then either running at Lenglet or, having track him. And Valverde is going to win that every single time. Busquets just doesn't have the legs to keep up with him anymore.
What struck me, and I need y'all's help in unpacking this match here. Barca had 11 shots total, 4 shots on goal. Real Madrid had 15 shots, 9 on target. And Real Madrid had just an edge in terms of possession of 52%. I thought the first half, to me, still felt fairly balanced. Barca was a slight favorite at the beginning of the game. Second half, it started just going blanco, blanco, blanco. But you look at the second goal, and I got to tell you something. That, to me, is just still, it is dark arts on dark arts where it becomes a white art, right? I mean, I can't, and of course it's Sergio Ramos, right? The Darth Vader. And the third goal was already done for the most part. So 3-1 in my mind, I don't know if it really signifies how unbalanced the game was. I thought at halftime, I still thought it could go either way. Alex, do you have a thought on that?
Well, I agree with the last point that at halftime it could have gone either way. Off the bat, I'd say Barcelona looked more dangerous in the first half. Ansu Fati played, in a higher role where, that allowed, Jordy Alba to go and make that run all the way, and that late run that Messi likes to drop, pick up the ball, and play in behind, like we saw on Ansu Fati's goal. So in the first half, yes, I think it could have gone either way, but for me, the second half was clear, like you were saying. You know, the Blancos, that was it. Real Madrid took over. There was a people could say suspect call on the Ramos Lenglet incident, but for me, it's just really lazy defending. There's no need for, you know, Lenglet to like turn his back and pull with him. That doesn't make sense to me, because even if Ramos is going to jump over him, you couldn't defend that in that position anyways. So he got caught going for Ramos's fake forward, and then Ramos went slightly back. And it's interesting because initially I thought Ramos fell the wrong way. I thought he should have, with the jersey pull, fell into Lenglet. But looking back at the replay, I'm thinking, no, that's not the case. I think the case was that because the ball was actually behind Ramos, he jumped backwards to make it look like, to make his own case that he could have actually made that header because he was jumping backwards. And what limited him from jumping backwards was Lenglet pulling his jersey. Therefore, for me, PK. Okay. Now in the English Premier League, I see Harry Maguire trying to get signed by WWE. So I'm not sure what's happening over there, Chris. But, you know, in La Liga, that's a PK. And in EPL, that's not even a foul.
Well, you're not going to get an argument from me there, but it seems like La Liga and Champions League has had a little more experience than the English Premier League, as shown by that miraculous non-call. But, you know, the Ansu Fati point was interesting in that 53% attacks were coming from the left side. And I guess on Real Madrid, it was 45% coming on the right side, which is consistent with what you were saying earlier, Scott. You know, I'm not going to begrudge it was a PK. I don't know if it really would have impacted things, but that doesn't matter. It's still a PK. You know, I almost wish that they would just start throwing players out of games and then playing the ball from where the infraction occurred, just to make it more interesting. I don't like XGs of 0.74, and I'm sorry, I'm a goalkeeper. You're not going to be able to stamp that out. I like to think that we still have a chance because, frankly, when Ramos hits those PKs, I don't think a keeper does have a chance. So, you know, I don't know if I'm ready to throw Barca completely under the bus on this one because, frankly, I think Real Madrid is playing pretty lackluster ball, and maybe I'm the problem or fans are the problem in that we're expecting the top 11 to play every single game. And that might have happened in past years, but in this year, we're going to see the second team play. We're going to see the U23s play, to your point about Shakhtar. And guess what? There are going to be surprises that are going to happen. And that might make football a whole lot funner to watch. So maybe I'm the problem in that I'm just assuming that the top 11 players are going to play all the time. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we do, as fans, as analysts, we need to readjust how this year is going to play out. And, you know, even if it's not, there was still so much talent on this pitch in El Clasico. And, you know, there's always that massive storyline, the rivalry between the two teams. It's always exciting, even if it's not the highest quality match. And, you know, even with this one, Barcelona had, two 17-year-olds playing. First time since, like, 1948. Yeah. Both teams had come into this game with a La Liga loss for the first time in 17 years. And then, you know, you've got the Barcelona team in a little bit of a transition, going with the younger players. Messi's another talking point. You want to talk about stats, 3 of 14 on the dribble. It's 31%. So really poor showing from him. But, you know, there's so many other storylines that emerged during the game. So in this one, Real Madrid had 59% possession in the first half. that one played out evenly, like you guys were saying, maybe a little bit even in Barcelona's favor. Possession totally flops or, swaps in the second half. Barcelona has 56%. And all of a sudden it's Real Madrid who looks dangerous.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's the waves in the game, the waves of momentum, the difference in tempo, the little tactical decisions. I think Zidane going to his bench a little bit earlier, that helped. There's always so many storylines to pick out of these games. I don't mind that they have to start the younger players or deviate from the starting 11 that they prefer. I mean, Alex, what's your take?
Yeah, I think we need to shout out Sam Leverage, our man Sam, because he put out a really great article and analysis on this game. Scott, I saw you tweet that out. That was great. He brought up some really great points of how the tactical battle went down between Zidane and Koeman, and how Zidane really got his team to take care of the center of the park and immediately react to the Ansu Fati threat. Maybe not immediately because the goal happened, but you could argue on that goal that Nacho was a little too high out of place that allowed Jordy Alba to get in behind for, honestly, let's be honest, Messi's biggest play of the game, which is standard by his standards. Nacho, like you said, was decent, but we have to be really impressed with Lucas Vazquez because he comes in and I think I saw a stat where he won a ridiculous amount of duels. Like I think it was like eight duels he won. I think that was only less than Ramos and Varane.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Right. And that's a ridiculous stat that he deserves a ton of credit for, because that is definitely not easy when you're playing against, that left-handed side, whether it's Fati or Coutinho. A little more Coutinho in this game, although what happens, in Messi's case is Coutinho does like to drift in center of the park, and I think that closes down space for him. Then De Jong likes to drift in the center of the park. Then Busquets is in the center of the park. And let's talk about Pedri. Pedri was making his Clasico debut, one of the 17-year-olds or 18 maybe, 17 I think, who's making that start. And you have to say that he wasn't very impactful or a big presence for them. I don't know if he was the right player to go with. I'm still a Trincao fan, maybe in this case, to maybe go at that left-handed side for against Real Madrid for Barcelona. But man, in the midfield, that's where, as Sam and Scott, you were saying, like that's where they won. As Sam was saying in his article, and as you were saying, Scott, that's where they really won in the midfield. And we talked about Casemiro last podcast and how important he would be to this game. And he took the most attacking midfielder, whoever that was for Barcelona, and put on a great performance. And then you'd have Valverde running through, Toni Kroos doing his job. And that's it for me. That's why Real Madrid won, because everybody did their job. And Zidane reacted very well tactically, especially at halftime, to what Barcelona was throwing forward. And the reality is Barcelona reacted too late with substitutions. Way too late. How are you going to sub on everyone in the 82nd minute? That's, for me, one of Koeman's biggest mistakes in this game. And, I'd love to hear your thoughts too, Chris, on Netto, because I thought he was a decent performer until that very last goal with Modric scores. I think he can hold that ball when he's going down, but maybe that's a little harsh.
I want to talk a little bit about Norberto Mora Netto, okay? 31-year-old goalkeeper, journeyman goalkeeper. He started out in Brazil with his home team, Atletico Paranaense, went to Fiorentina, Juve, backed up Buffon for a couple of years, Valencia, and Barcelona. Now, he had 6 saves, 4 of which I would say are super legit. Do the math, 3 plus 4. This could have easily been a 5-6 or 7-1 match if it weren't for the keeper. So I think there's something to be said about the absolute chaos of that final goal. But the game was already lost at that point. And I would just say that I'm just happy to see that kind of a loyal backup gets his chance in the El Clasico, and he does a really strong job. So yes, maybe he could have held on to it. Yes, maybe he could have been a little more calm once he got up and worked on the set position. But come on, Modric, that the way he bent it through is ridiculous, right? You just there. What are there? Maybe 10 people on the planet that can have the presence of mind and bend it around a defender like that on a broken play. So I want to give him the unsung hero of that, because Barca would be sweating the blues a whole lot more if it weren't without Netto.
I do want to sing the praises though of Sergino Dest and how he dealt with Vinicius Jr.
Mhm.
We got to shout him out. You know, as an American, I thought first American ever, by the way, to be in El Clasico. So, you know, what an achievement. Hats off, you know, clap for him. And to deal with Vinicius Jr., who is arguably one of the best 1v1 players in La Liga, maybe in world football, that was not an easy task. And I do remember, you know, there was this one play, I think it was the second half, where Vinicius was doing his shifty movement, and then he made that chop to go down the line, but Dest read it very early and put his body in between. I think he's definitely a player that Barcelona can turn into a legitimate starting right back and perhaps one of the best right backs in La Liga. You guys agree?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. What I can't get over is the age of these players now, right? We had two 17-year-olds, one 19-year-old. How is it that in certain positions, probably, right, wingers, you would think, help me unpack that, Scott. How is it that youth, now, in terms of star strikers, they're still over the age of 30 for the most part, but help me unpack the fact, how is it that younger players can get in first teams more nowadays than it seems like in the past?
It does seem like it's mostly in the wings that we're seeing the youth really emerge.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think at that point you are looking at there's fewer miles on the legs. There's still that great burst of speed and still the agility necessary to really be effective 1v1 players. And you know, you look at a player like Marcelo, um, as he's hit his late 20s, early 30s, performance level really declines for those wingers. He just looks heavy-legged at times. So for me, when I look at the outside back position in particular, it seems like it is 23, 24 that these guys are hitting peak. And by 27, 28, we're seeing them transition into, you know, maybe more of a stay-at-home role within their teams. So Paul now, you know, we see him playing a little bit deeper. Jordy Alba for Barcelona, I think he mostly stays higher up the pitch and doesn't have responsibilities, and that's where you know, you get a guy like De Jong who is tasked with covering for him.
Right.
So as they age, yeah, you need to.
So, Alex, I know you have the legs of a 19-year-old, and in your position, they don't peak until, what is Sergio, 31 now or 32? So you got another decade or 12 years to play ball.
Yeah, I
But
was just thinking about that, right? I think Scott makes a good point. It's easier to put, and I've seen this in my own career too, it's easier to put very young players in attacking roles because the risk is not as high. I think it comes down to that. When you put in a young goalkeeper, and I always think back to David De Gea at Man United when he first came and he wasn't even close to being developed. And, you know, he may be making a ton of mistakes, especially on those crosses coming in because he just wasn't ready. But when the coach really backs you, if you're a goalkeeper or one of the defenders, and in this case, I think Sergino Dest is really getting backed by the manager, you can start to see, you know, they play beyond their years. And all of a sudden that really, you know, starts to get extremely encouraging. I think of Alphonso Davies' situation because they can all of a sudden, I'm talking about market value. they can erupt. And now Alphonso Davies, clause to leave is I don't even know how much money, but he is such an asset to that club, not only on the pitch, but off the pitch as well. And he's what, 20 years old? Like, come on. That's the encouraging side, the business side of bringing in young players and making them or growing them into these big time stars. But going back to your point about that being in a center back or defensive role, that's somewhere on the pitch where you got to be 10 out of 10, do your job. Goalkeeper, same thing. For me, it's even more crucial. 10 out of 10, maybe 11 out of 10, do your job, right? And I think maybe look at a young Varane. That was a special player, and to come in and just play with that extreme confidence. Look at a young Koundé for Sevilla, another special player. Garcia for City, who potentially might go back to Barcelona. Has to be said, those players are difficult to find, but you do still see, the center backs and especially in those, the right back and left back more often than center back, is young players making more of an impact in world football for sure.
Alex, for you, is it more of an issue with tactical intelligence at that age that hasn't developed, or psychological maturity, showing up every day?
I don't know if it's technical. I think it's more of a confidence factor / mentality / tactical awareness. So I think technical is where they might actually be at the same level, maybe even a little more superior, because you can ask them to, maybe do some 1v1 defending. They're really good in training, or maybe they're really good at hitting the ball diagonally with both feet, or good at finding the entry ball, or really good at heading the ball out. But then you put them into a game situation where there's a lot of pressure, where let's imagine you're playing against guys like Diego Costa and Suarez. If you're playing Atletico Madrid, it's a whole different animal. For me, it's the mental side of the game more than the tactical, and maybe too a little physical. When you're a center back and you're really starting to grow into your body at, maybe 23, 24, and you start to hit your peak when you're like 26, 27, 28. If you're Ramos, in this case, 30s, or other players too, 30s, like Chiellini too, like it's experience and understanding, where to move. I think that's really the key side of the game. And like Chris says for goalkeepers too, it's the same thing for goalkeepers as well. But young players, like we said, are definitely making a massive impact. I did want to just go back and have a couple more points on this El Clasico game. One is, how do we feel about the emerging role of Frankie de Jong in this Barcelona side in that midfield? Scott, you talked a little bit about, how he has to cover for Jordy Alba when Jordy Alba goes all the way up. But with Busquets' defensive performance, or really lack of performance, what does that mean for de Jong's role? Does he need a different type of player next to him in order for this Barcelona side to be more successful?
Yeah, I think so. They're asking way too much of him right now. I don't know. Alex, from watching, do you think he fills more of an 8 role, like a box midfielder? Because that's,
yeah, and that's just right. And I'll answer that too. Is I don't think that's his role. If you look back at Ajax, his role is not to be this destroyer. He is a exceptional creator, and he does win the ball back a decent amount. But when you're getting paired with, and I am a big fan of Busquets, but just lately it's just not been, the system's not working. And I think we look at the first goal, and I know you were mentioning that you really thought Busquets didn't do his job in that role. I argue too that not only Busquets, but Lenglet didn't really do his job well enough in that role. He slid over too much. Piqué gets caught going out a little bit. It's that heart is everything. And we talked about Carlos Puyol in past podcasts. That's when you really felt like there's a secure heart of the field, that they're really hard to play against. And now every team that's approaching Barcelona, it just feels like if you can attack that heart, that central part of the field, they are so vulnerable. And that just needs to be cleaned up. I do not know the answer to that question of how it can be cleaned up, if it's just literally getting all new personnel. But going back to this Frankie De Jong, talk, we're just not seeing his best qualities right now. He can do more. He can do more, and I think this system is actually not allowing him to do more. You can see him getting really frustrated, especially in that second half, alongside Messi, who was extremely frustrated after that PK call as well. And that's just, again, like last year we talked about, contagious bad energy that seeps through the entire team, seeps through the entire club, and that will continue on if it's not fixed.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know, De Jong almost seems displaced at times. In this match in particular, we saw Messi even dropping all the way into De Jong's role. Like that one pass that he had on the goal, that was from where you would see De Jong play. So I don't know. I don't know if he's really carved out his role in this system. I don't know if the system caters to him at all. We did see him as a little bit more of a dynamic playmaker at Ajax, and that's not where Barca really seems to want the playmaker or need it. Playmaker comes higher.
Right. And I thought the last point for me and on El Clasico, and if you guys have no further points too, we can move on. But Marco Asensio, really important role, I thought, in this match too. Played a really important role on the defensive side. And Vinicius did as well, to his credit, where they really would drop in and deal with that wide spot so that Real Madrid, could really take care of the center of the park, which caused Barca a lot of frustration, as we mentioned. But Asensio saying basically, Alba, if you're going to go all the way up the field, you better be ready for me to drag Lenglet out. That's a problem. That's a problem. And I don't know what the solution to that is either, because you can't have Alba just stay back and be conservative. That's not going to happen. Look at the first goal. You need Alba to be up the field, because that's really one of Barcelona, if not their most dangerous play, is that Messi to Alba ball to cross it in. And that's becoming a little too predictable. So credit to Asensio, credit to Real Madrid, credit to you, Scott. Big time performance, big time 3 points. Sevilla lost again to Eibar 1-0. That's, quite disappointing for Sevilla. That's 3 games where they've gone from, we talked about in previous podcasts, especially you, Chris, we thought they were real title contenders here. I'm not sure if, that's really looking like it now based off some of the recent performances, but maybe it's a little too early to call them out and say that they don't have a chance to do it. They definitely do, but it looks like it's in a bad spot. Atletico Madrid beat a good Betis side with the likes of Christian Telo and Fekir, 2-0. Suarez, man, he's back on the score sheet again. What more can we say about this player in this system, guys? It looks like he's really fitting in.
This is all I can say. He scored 4 out of Atletico Madrid's 9 goals, and Barca's got 9 goals, and that puts him about 4th or 5th in terms of goal production. I think it was a foolish mistake. I've understand the need to go young, but if you need to win, particularly in a transition year, a funky year, I just feel like it was a tremendous loss to Barca and a tremendous gift to Atletico Madrid. Go Atletico, I guess, on that.
Absolutely. So let's preview some matches here. We'll briefly preview a couple of La Liga matches, before we dive deeper into some more, let's be honest, exciting Champions League fixtures. The big one for me, guys, this week is, we've just spoken about Sevilla. How will they respond against a struggling side in Bilbao, but a side that definitely shouldn't be taken lightly? What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, Sevilla will have much of the ball in this game. And though they've struggled this year, they do defend against the counterattack pretty well. So I think they'll have enough to see off Bilbao's attack, especially since Bilbao is not exactly known for lighting up the scoreboard. So, for Sevilla, can they break through? Can they get around that low block and show a little bit more of a lethal quality in this match, because they really should have beat Eibar. They had 3 or 4 really good opportunities in the second half that they just didn't close out. I think Diego Carlos missed from 3 yards out in this one. So, I mean, they should win this game, but again, this is 2020. Who knows?
Who knows indeed? Who knows indeed? And Real Madrid take on Huesca. Barcelona take on Deportivo Alaves. I think it'd be a stretch to say anything less than an easy win for both groups. I don't know if I'm being disrespectful to those two teams. I hope I am, and they're interesting games. But I don't really see anything less than a win, Scott. What do you think?
The thing I would say is watch out for Huesca's low block.
Okay.
They managed to hold Atletico Madrid to a 0-0 draw and looked fairly comfortable doing it. And that's Barcelona's kryptonite. So watch out.
It really is. Low blocks have caused Barcelona a lot of issues, especially in this last year. Speaking of potential low blocks, Barcelona has to face an Italian team called Juventus on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Perhaps one of the kings at the low blocks and counterattacking the Italians, not only Italians, but Juventus as well. Chris, Scott, what can we expect from this amazing, supposed to be incredible matchup and tactical battle here?
I'm going to give you the top line stuff, and Scott, you could pick it up from there. I think we've got basically wounded warriors here that, it is your box of chocolates match. I'm not sure what we're going to get, right? I mean, the number of injuries, COVID, I'm still trying to figure out lineups, quite honestly. And Juve has not been what it has been, right? While is at Barca is certainly in that category. So I am a little disappointed. I wanted the best 11 to play against the best 11. We're not going to get that. But Scott, help us unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, Chris, you're right. Definitely a rough start for Juve. 2 wins, 3 draws in 5 games. Still a 10-4 goal differential in league, but it's really the absences in this game that will make such a difference. Yeah, Alex, you already mentioned Piqué's out, picked up the red card. Ter Stegen will still be out, and you've also got Umtiti who's out for this match. So
Right.
I guess Araujo slips into the starting lineup.
Definitely.
Same case for Juventus. They're just running out of center backs. Chiellini, Bonucci, and De Ligt all out for this match. So I think you see Danilo slide in. But yeah, I think for Pirlo, it's, what kind of a starting shape do you go with, especially knowing that you don't have Cristiano Ronaldo up top. So this game's a wild card. Alex, I'm really not sure what to do.
I'm really not sure either. I'm hoping this is an opportunity. I'm looking at it from a player perspective. We just talked about earlier in the podcast how this, really tight string of games can really be a struggle for teams that play the same starting 11 all the time. Now, this can absolutely be a chance for someone to make their case. The players that are not in the starting 11 and that have maybe 1 or 2 days of training in between where they only showcase a 5v5, 6v6, 2v2s, 1v1s. And, they're really aching to get some 11v11 football. So maybe because of that, we can see a better game. I think I'm just being too much of a positive and optimist here because let's be honest, any game where we could have seen a Cristiano Ronaldo versus Lionel Messi and we're not going to have that is always, no matter what, going to be a letdown. No matter what. We were hoping for this. I think it's been a while since, we've had that matchup. Coutinho is also out. I'm not sure if you mentioned that, Scott, but apparently he's out with a hamstring injury. Umtiti just recently said that, The only club he wants to play for is FC Barcelona after all that long transfer talk and them wanting him out and his poor performances. I'm personally still a fan of his. I think he could turn things around and become, pivotal in this Barcelona side. PK out with the red card. Like you said, Araujo is going to come in. I do expect Sergio Dest to start after that performance. And I said that hesitantly because, Sergio Roberto is still an important part of this squad. Alba on the left, Araujo, Lenglet in the middle. Where I don't know in terms of the defense is the goalkeeper spot, Chris Netto or Ter Stegen, if Ter Stegen's back.
I think it's Netto for now, though. I'm hearing rumors that Ter Stegen really wants to be back. So it could be the weekend where Ter Stegen comes back is probably the sensible thing to do. But Allison came back 2 weeks early, 2 or 3 weeks early, because he wants to play ball.
Right. And another interesting part for the Barcelona side before we maybe go into the Juve side a little bit is what the midfield's going to look like. We all know it's going to be De Jong. That's for sure. Is Pjanic going to get a shot? Because he played in the last Champions League game. He was decent, but after this last performance with Busquets in the midfield in El Clasico against a team that really made life difficult in the middle of the park and can counterattack so quickly, I think Juve is in the same boat there where they can really make life difficult centrally and then, with some really quick players higher up the field, is counterattack this Barcelona side. What do you expect there, Scott, in the middle of the park?
I mean, from a defensive standpoint, I don't think you get anything different with Pjanic.
True. That's true too.
I mean, the only advantage I see is, maybe if Juve, which I'm not entirely sure they'll do, Pjanic is probably a better option to help spray the ball wide. Barcelona does expect Pirlo to drop his side back a little bit deeper. Then, yeah, Pjanic would make sense. So he and De Jong could fit into the midfield. I don't know. Alba, I'm not sure. So my argument against Alba is that he is coming back from injury. He is a little bit older, so maybe you move Dest to the left, have Roberto on the right. But for me, if they are going up against a tight Juventus defense, what do you do up top? Because that is still an issue. Does Griezmann play?
Right. I don't think Griezmann starts the game. I'm looking at Fati. I mean, that would be a really, big slap in the face from Koeman to tell Griezmann when Coutinho is out injured that he's still going to remain on the bench. I'm going to say the same thing again. I think it should be Trincao, Messi, Fati. That's my opinion. I don't know I think Griezmann just closes the field too much in that situation. But maybe he comes on and makes a massive performance. What I'm interested to see is this Juventus side with Alvaro Morata looking decent, right? He knows this team very well. He obviously he's Spanish. He's played in the Spanish league a lot. I think he causes a lot of problems for these center backs. Paulo Dybala right behind him too. Same thing. Aaron Ramsey looks decent. Okay, not in his best form. But what about Artur? I'm questioning, can he even play in this match? Is there a specific clause that says he can't play against his former Barcelona team? Doesn't look like it.
I'm not aware of that at all. I think he's going to have a little bit of extra juice.
Right.
Just in the same way that I think Dybala and Morata are going to have, where it's they want to be shown love, right? And this is their opportunity to be outside of the Ronaldo shadow. And for Morata to say, I am the real deal. At Juve, he was very much beloved. Wasn't necessarily the most prolific goal scorer on his first stint, but he made some very high-profile goals, particularly in the Champions League in the past. So there's plenty of love there for him, but he wants to earn it in this unique situation. And I'm curious to see how their offense is run. You know, it hasn't been running great without Ronaldo, quite candidly, in the last few matches.
Right. You know, I'm really curious too to see. I think the biggest question here is how is Andrea Pirlo gonna respond tactically to this Barcelona side, because he is probably one of the smartest players to ever play the game. His soccer IQ is so high, and he really sees, everything. As a player, obviously in the middle of that park, but I have to assume that he knows this Barcelona side very well. I read his book, I Think Therefore I Play, and he actually almost signed for Barcelona. He had a secret meeting with Pep Guardiola. He was this close to signing, but ultimately I think he was going to be the fourth midfielder. We'd have to rotate with Iniesta, Xavi, and Busquets, so that wasn't his destiny. But I think it's just going to be really interesting to see how he thinks Barcelona is beatable. And if that's the same way that Barcelona is beatable in the mind of Zinedine Zidane, in the mind of some of the smaller teams in La Liga that have caused them problems, maybe in the mind of Sevilla, although I don't think that's how they're going to approach it, maybe in a Sevilla sense. I'm just really excited about that side, the tactical side, where maybe he thinks maybe just the solution is just to sit and low block, and that's just how it should be. That's how Barcelona loses. But then it becomes a point where I think for Barcelona's case, it becomes a little bit of insanity, where how are you going to lose to low block teams all the time? All the time. I think that's a little too much, but more frequently than you should be losing to low block teams. I just don't know how you can continue, to have those specific same problems. And I think the problem lies in the stubborn philosophy at times to not change with the evolving way football, is going into. Am I making a decent case, Scott, or is it just yeah?
So, I mean, for me, I think Juve goes with the middle block. Maybe sets that midfield line of confrontation, and they just is having numbers behind the ball. Because the midfield they do have, it's maybe not the most creative, but when you look at Arthur, Rabiot, so I think they'll look to be hardworking in the midfield. My question though is, what do they do with that back line? And because they have so many injuries with that back line, does that force them a little bit deeper? So, maybe they go with the low block, Alex, because they know it works against Barcelona and because they have so many injuries. But yeah, do they go with three like he has in the recent past, the 3-4-1-2, or does he drop back to a four-back system because he only has two healthy center backs, or really one and a half with Danilo? I don't know.
No, I expect the back three. I think Cuadrado and Bernadeschi fill in on the wide wing back spots and create that five, and everything goes a little bit more centrally. Whether I think it's Rabiot who will probably get the start too. If it's alongside Arthur, we'll see. And they close that up, and then they really bank on Dybala and Morata countering this weak center of the park, like both, like we're all saying. But there's something to be said about losing your leaders at the back. I think Juventus is far from not being vulnerable. They're definitely vulnerable to a good Barcelona side, especially in the attack. But we'll have to wait and see. Szczesny could be a big player, Chris, in this game too, depending on how he approaches the game. But I think he's been really decent in this role for Juventus coming up, and from Buffon's shadow, and now he's the main guy to go to.
Yeah, what I remarked on last season was just how, including post-COVID or post-pause, he was just really solid, and he really saved Juve a couple of times where Juve only beat out Inter by a point, and Szczesny is worth every penny. what I'm curious just for grins, I wonder if, it'd be nice to see Buffon out there. He's still on the roster. Just for the sake of the old guys that I'm cheering for at a young 42 years old. But no, I think Chesney's going to probably have some big opportunities to show well during the match.
Yep, Fati plus Pedri does not equal Buffon. So he's got double the experience there.
Exactly right. Exactly
So,
right.
what do we think in terms of score lines, just to wrap it up for this game? Chris?
I think it's going to be 2-1 either way.
All right, I'm saying a 1-1 draw.
I'll go 2-1 Barca.
All right. Man of the match.
Fati.
Fati, Chris?
Easy. Chesney.
You really want to say Messi, don't you?
I want to say Messi. I'm going to go with Messi. Yeah, I'm going to do Messi. I was going to say De Jong, but I thought about it, and I just don't think that can happen in this system. So we'll have to see how that game plays out Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure you tune in. Atletico Madrid takes on Salzburg, not Red Bull Leipzig, Red Bull Salzburg, and not Red Bull New York, Red Bull Salzburg, because there's a lot of Red Bulls out there. So what do we expect after their thumping from Bayern? Is that not even going to be in their mindset at all, Scott?
I don't think so. And when you look at Salzburg, Jesse Marsch coach team, they are very expansive, very dynamic, young, and attacking. And I think that plays into Atletico's hands. So they'll let Salzburg have the ball. They'll let them get numbers forward. They'll let them try to interact higher up the pitch, and then they'll hit them on the counterattack. So I think Atletico should walk away with probably a 2-goal margin in this one.
Right, and I think it's going to be interesting to see, if Carrasco and João Felix start. I thought Carrasco, had a decent performance in the last game. He almost scored a worldie of a goal on the curler off the post. And then right, and then João Felix he's been in and out. I don't know. He was a little bit of a flop or disappointment last season, right? Is that just young age, or is that?
I think that was really bad career advice.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, with my Portuguese heritage, I follow the Portuguese national players really closely. I would go to a club like Atletico that wants him to do the dirty work.
Right.
Sure, but he's not the same kind of player that Griezmann is. He is a little bit more of a cerebral presence and fit. So it doesn't surprise me that it's not going great.
Right, and it seems like Lucas Torreira is definitely coming into his own in that midfield alongside a very class player in Koke, who bleeds Atletico Madrid red. Oblak, obviously leader for them at the back, and on Lodi we talked about him. How about Kieran Trippier? We don't see many Englishmen in La Liga. Why is that, Scott? Why don't we see that more often?
I think it's just the level of competition and the wages in England. You could probably make the case that there's not that nice, easy transition in terms of playing style. But yeah, you could. I think when Trippier came over, he did mention that he liked the prospect of going to a new league and testing himself in a new footballing culture. So, I mean, credit to him for doing it. And I think he does give them that little bit of veteran leadership that right now they don't necessarily have otherwise on that back line. But yeah, he's been a really good fit.
Definitely solid. Chris, do you have anything to add on this Atletico Madrid side?
I know the sports books consider them heavy favorites, huge payout if Salzburg wins. So, You guys, I'll go ahead and out myself. I still picked Barca to win La Liga. I'm wondering Atletico Madrid just kind of does Atletico Madrid and ends up coming in a second and maybe even contending on a soft Real Madrid. So it'll be interesting. I think Atletico Madrid will continue to go deep in Champions League, right? And the sports books had said that Juve, Barcelona, it's literally a flip of a coin. They're not taking a position. They're just going to take their 10%. But on this one, Atletico, Atletico, Atletico.
I agree. I think we all agree that Atletico will take the game, but like you mentioned, Scott, Salzburg is no easy task.
Mm-hmm.
Real Madrid takes on Mönchengladbach. They'll be rocking sky high after this Clasico win. It should be a big confidence booster, in my opinion, that they've beat Barcelona twice in this crazy 2020 year, and that it's really looking like they're the dominant team in Spain. And I think it's not even looking like that is the case, especially in these last few years. Champions League is their league. It's their trophy still, in my opinion, even after last year's showing. So Scott, what can we expect from this game against a good German team?
Yeah, so they'll find that this Borussia Mönchengladbach team does not play with fear, that they will build out of the back in most cases. They'll invite that Real Madrid high press, much like we saw with Shakhtar. So if they can effectively pull Real Madrid out, and if Real Madrid's high press is not on, this game could get open, and that does favor Borussia Mönchengladbach. They're very good at picking out their targets higher up the pitch. So defensively, no slouches either. So it's a test for Real Madrid, and not necessarily a welcome one after that disappointment against Shakhtar. Chris, what do you think?
I agree with you. I mean, we just talked about how one team that went with a system plus intensity ended up upsetting Real Madrid. And right now, the sports books are saying that Real Madrid is a strong favorite, not a huge one like Atletico Madrid. And I don't know. I think that if you're Real Madrid, you might want to keep your heart below your throat and your sphincter loose, because this is going to get pretty tight here, pretty sort of match. I think if there's a surprise this week, it's a bit of a no-brainer. This could be the big surprise.
Right. Mönchengladbach is a good team. Fun fact, they also have Lilian Thuram's son, Marcus Thuram. He's a winger. So Lilian Thuram, for anyone who doesn't know, legendary French center back, known for being a really, really tough player, World Cup winner. And then his son has gone on to play for the French national team, and he's actually playing in an attacking role. He's scoring goals in France. I actually saw him play when I was playing in France. Really good player. He could cause problems for this Real Madrid side. Last thing before we move on to Sevilla versus Rennes. Do we expect any changes to the lineup, Scott, or same exact team that went out against Barcelona?
Oh man, I hope it's the same team, because that did work out really well. So I guess at right back, the one change at the starting lineup is probably Vasquez. I don't know that Marcelo's ready for reinsertion into the lineup after that performance against Shakhtar, especially since Mendy really looked out of place on the right. So probably Vasquez on the right should be the extent of.
Right. And then the last game to wrap up the Champions League previews is Sevilla versus Rennes. Rennes coming off a loss in Ligue 1 against Angers, 2-1. Sevilla coming off 2 losses and a tie in Champions League against Chelsea. Do we expect a big response from Sevilla here, guys, or are they going to fall into this kind of dark momentum of things aren't going well, so they're going to continue not to go well?
You could make the case that the results against Chelsea was a positive. So at least in Champions League, which I think they're prioritizing, because if you're there, you want to get to the knockout rounds and make the big money. Yeah, I think they'll rebound. This giving up 10. So this has the making of a fairly high-scoring affair. I could see it being maybe a 3-2, 2-1.
Right.
But yeah, I think Sevilla definitely has the quality to see them out. You know, they just, yeah, not sure what disconnect they're having right now. So they're still making the progress into the box, but that's really the one thing seeming to click. So I think it's just a matter of time.
You know, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I want us to keep in mind that Rennes is third in Ligue 1, but they've given up 10 goals compared to PSG's and Lille's 3 and 8 of Marseille. And I got one name for you, is Mendy, right? I really think that Mendy it put Rennes on his back and carried him into the Champions League this last year, and he's not there now, which is Rennes' loss and Chelsea's great benefit. So that's where I see that Sevilla, it's kind of like Atletico Madrid in that they get banged up, they get dinged, but they always seem to be at the right place at the end of the season. And I've really enjoyed watching Sevilla. Last season I thought was it was a great season for them. Didn't work out as maybe as much as they'd hoped, but I think we're gonna have some fun in them playing Champions League ball.
I completely agree. And a couple players to look out for, and maybe one in particular for Rennes. We mentioned Mendy. Obviously, he's gone now on the defensive side, but the attacking side, they have a good young player coming up through the ranks, Eduardo Camavinga, who has made his debut with the full French national team. He's got some serious talent. If he continues to progress, Didier Deschamps is very high on him. So he could really cause a few issues for this Sevilla side if they're not careful, because he is playing at sky high confidence right now, and that's what happens usually when you're young and you come in, you're doing well, you don't really have any fear, and that's what it seems like he's playing with right now is no fear. And Zonzi is another one who Didier Deschamps is obviously very high on. He has him in that World Cup squad, and he always makes the French camps that defensive midfielder role. He likes to pull the strings, almost like an old school Abu Dhabi for Arsenal type, or a holding mid. If Paul Pogba was a little bit more of a holding mid, not as much flair, obviously. You got those long legs and breaks up a lot of plays in the midfield. That could be an issue too for Sevilla. But overall, having said all of that, a couple players to look out for. But I mean, I do believe this is going to be a Sevilla win, and they're going to respond. And they're usually very good in Europe. So a lot to look forward to, gentlemen, this week. That was a lot of games we had to unpack, but that wraps up today's episode. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Total Football Analysis La Liga podcast. Big thank you to Chris and Scott for your fantastic insights today. As always, we would like to thank Total Football Analysis Solutions. Go check out www.totalfootballanalysis.com. They are the world's largest open source soccer analyst community. See you next week, and hasta luego.